business will not be tolerated. For this event, members will have 5 minutes with witnesses. I would ask each of my colleagues to keep both your questions and complete answers from the witnesses within those allotted 5 minutes. Any last questions that can't be answered in time will be submitted for the record. In the same manner in which the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence has conducted itself in recent worldwide threats hearings, I expect that we will continue to act in a bipartisan and respectful manner during today's event. I'm confident all members can treat each of our witnesses today with due respect, consistent with past practice. This worldwide threats hearing provides the American people the opportunity to hear directly from our intelligence community leadership on the threats that face our nation. It's my pleasure to welcome our witnesses to today's hearing. Director of National Intelligence, the Honorable Tulsi Gabbard. Director of Central Intelligence Agency, the Honorable John Ratcliffe. Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Honorable Kash Patel. Director of National Security Agency, General Tim Hawk. Director of Defense Intelligence Agency, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz. Thank you all for being here. First, I want to address an issue that was made public earlier this week regarding a group text message exchange that included several members of President Trump's national security leadership team and a journalist. Yesterday, our colleagues on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence held their hearing on the annual threat assessment. And unfortunately, instead of exploring the real and existential threats that face our nation, which is the purpose of this hearing, this issue consumed most of their time. While I will address this topic further in my questions, it's my sincere hope that we use this hearing to discuss the many foreign threats facing our nation. I have deep concerns about the state of our national security. The war between Russia and Ukraine has just surpassed 3 years and now includes North Korean troops on the battlefield. Iran remains the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, supporting terrorist organizations throughout the Middle East like Hezbollah and Hamas, fueling the latter's war with Israel and Gaza. The threat of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has metastasized worldwide, expanding a robust military and espionage capability well beyond the Pacific, including here within the Western Hemisphere. The CCP's aggressiveness in operations below the level of armed conflict continues to grow. For example, they have sponsored cyber attacks against the United States critical infrastructure and even recruited a New York State governor's office employee into being an undisclosed agent of the CCP. And after 4 years of a catastrophic open border policy and limited and in many cases no vetting, we have seen an explosion of illegal migrants crossing our border since 2021. In fiscal year 2024, 516 were identified to be known or suspected terrorists, 106 of whom tried to sneak into our country between ports of entry. And these are just the ones we caught of the nearly 3 million encounters recorded by Customs and Border Protection. We've also seen an ISIS-affiliated human smuggling network bringing more than 400 migrants into the United States. And this occurs through networks associated with cartels and gangs from Sinaloa to CJ&G, who present an unacceptable risk to the security of the American people. In the midst of such threats, many have understandably lost trust in the intelligence community. One reason I'm particularly concerned about is the pattern of lapses I've seen in analytic integrity and objectivity in some of the assessments provided by the IC in the last few years. From President Trump-Russia collusion fiasco to the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic to anomalous health incidents, there have been numerous instances of the IC suppressing certain reporting, using substandard reporting to support a pre-decided thesis, and failure or refusal to consider plausible alternative analyses. That, combined with many other examples of weaponized government, results in a situation where the United States is facing very real threats, while many of our citizens lack trust in those they empower to inform on or counter these threats. Look, I've been honored to serve our country for many years now, first as an explosive ordnance disposal technician in the Army, now as a representative for the 1st District of Arkansas and chairman of this committee. In my time here, I've traveled the world and met with countless IC employees, from everyday Americans doing challenging and often dangerous work of intelligence to agencies directors like yourselves. The vast majority of those people are honest, hardworking, patriotic Americans that silently and without accolades do difficult jobs, often in austere places, sacrificing time with their families and in some cases putting themselves in danger, all in order to serve the United States. These silent warriors deserve our gratitude and our respect. They do not deserve to have their reputations besmirched by poor leadership. Unfortunately, in recent years, we've seen instances of politicized, self-serving, dishonest leaders sustaining the reputation of our institutions and patriots by abusing the powers and sacred trust given to them by the American people. We have some real work to do. You and your roles as leaders of prestigious organizations and us as members of this committee charged with conducting honest and rigorous oversight must ensure that our institutions work for the American people. Those that don't uphold the stringent standards of integrity that the American people expect and deserve must be held accountable. In the instances where trust is breached, those involved must be held accountable. This will help rebuild the trust between the American people and those that serve them in the intelligence community. Today, we need you to be candid about the threats facing the United States. I have deep concerns that many threats have been downplayed or not taken seriously enough for some time, particularly in the homeland and the Western Hemisphere. I look forward to hearing your assessment. Thank you again to our witnesses for being here today. And with that, I want to yield to the distinguished ranking member, Mr. Himes, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning and welcome to our witnesses. As the chairman said, this hearing is an important opportunity for our committee and the American people to hear directly from the senior leadership of the intelligence community about the threats that our nation faces. I read the unclassified report and I found a lot of continuity in the IC's assessment about critical threats to our national security compared to last year's assessment. The IC continues to see threats from our principal adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. I must say, though, that after these last 2 months, I'm worried that the call may be coming from inside the House. This report calls Russia, and I quote, an enduring potential threat to U.S. power, presence, and global interests. But as far as I can tell, we're now on Team Kremlin. We vote with them and against our allies in the United Nations. We humiliate President Zelensky in the Oval Office. The president's chief Russian negotiator, Steve Witkoff, is repeating Russian talking points and participating on a madcap signal chat about an attack on Yemen while inside Russia. USAID is gone, and with it, all American soft power. If I had time, I would ask the generals at this table about what it means to our national security to give up our soft power. We're no longer helping struggling nations in Africa. China, or worse, terrorists, are filling the vacuum. I wonder how many of those African countries will be named in next year's threat assessment. Thanks to DOJ, the men we paid to guard the most vicious ISIS terrorists in the world in Syria walked off the job. Do you think we'll see their names in this document next year? Elon Musk fired the people who maintain our nuclear weapons. Does that feel like a threat to you? Apparently, all of this mayhem is cheered by the President of the United States and by 20-somethings with laptops and nicknames like Big Balls. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that Moscow and Beijing and Tehran and Pyongyang cannot believe their luck. Now we come to learn that people in the most dangerous and sensitive jobs on the planet put extremely specific pre-decisional discussions about a military attack on signal, which could be intercepted by the Russians and the Chinese. Everyone here knows that the Russians or the Chinese could have gotten all of that information, and they could have passed it on to the Houthis, who easily could have repositioned weapons and altered their plans to knock down planes or sink ships. I think that it's by the awesome grace of God that we are not mourning dead pilots right now. The two general officers sitting at the table and the people who work for all of you know that if they had set up and participated in the signal chat, they would be gone. And they know that there's only one response to a mistake of this magnitude. You apologize, you own it, and you stop everything until you can figure out what went wrong and how it might not ever happen again. But that's not what happened. The Secretary of Defense responded with a brutal attack on the reporter who did not ask to be on the signal chain. Yesterday, our former colleague Mike Waltz did the same in the White House and then went on Fox to call Jeff Goldberg a loser. What do you think the people who work for you are seeing and learning from that? Now, except for that last part, almost all of the mayhem slowly eroding our safety, our standing, and our security in the world has largely happened outside the IC. If you had a part in that, and I suspect you did, I thank you. I'll say it now and I'll say it again every time we see each other over the next couple of years. You must protect the thousands of patriots who go to work every day under you to keep us safe. You need to go to work every day thinking about their morale, their well-being, and their protection. I've done intelligence oversight for more than a decade. It's my job to ask you the tough questions and maybe even make you uncomfortable. But John, I don't ever walk through your lobby and look at those 140 stars on the wall without choking up over the fact that men and women far better than I will give their lives to keep us safe. There's about a dozen people in this room who know all their stories, and you know and I know that many of the men and women who have stars on that wall died because of bad decisions or poor judgment by their leaders. We've all worked together before, and recent events notwithstanding, we need you to succeed. Your people and our safety requires you to succeed. I really hope you do. But let me say now that if some overcaffeinated 20-year-old succeeds in firing your linguists, or your mathematicians, or your paramilitary officers, if you shut down some unit because Steve Bannon or Seb Gorka doesn't like it, America will be less safe and people will get hurt. And I and this committee and history will be very unkind.
Gentleman yields. Now recognize Director Gabbard to make a statement on behalf of the intelligence community.
Thank you very much, Chairman Crawford and Ranking Member Himes. Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity for us to be here to present the 2025 Annual Threat Assessment. I'm joined here by my colleagues from the CIA, DIA, FBI, and NSA. Our testimony today offers the collective assessment of the 18 U.S. intelligence elements making up the U.S. intelligence community and draws on the intelligence collection and information available to the IC from open source and private sector and the expertise of our analysts. It evaluates what the IC assesses most threatens our people and our nation's ability to live in a peaceful, free, secure, and prosperous society. As you know very well, we face an increasingly complex threat environment that is threatening us here at home and our interests abroad. I'll begin by focusing on what most immediately and directly threatens the United States and the well-being of the American people: the non-state criminal groups and terrorists putting American lives and livelihood at risk. I'll then move on to focus on the key nation states who have the capability to threaten our security and the interests of the United States. Cartels, gangs, and other transnational criminal organizations in our part of the world are engaging in a wide array of illicit activity, from narcotics trafficking to money laundering, smuggling of illegal immigrants, and human trafficking, which endanger the health, welfare, and safety of everyday Americans. Based on our latest reporting available for the year-long period ending October 2024, cartels were largely responsible for the deaths of more than 54,000 American citizens due to synthetic opioids. Mexico-based transnational criminal organizations are the main suppliers of illicit fentanyl to the U.S. market and are quickly adapting to enforcement and regulatory pressures by using multiple sources and methods to procure precursor chemicals and equipment, primarily from China and India, many of which are dual-use chemicals used in legitimate industries. Independent fentanyl producers are also increasingly fragmenting the drug trade in Mexico. The ready availability of precursor chemicals and ease of making illicit fentanyl have enabled independent actors to increase illicit fentanyl production and smuggling operations in Mexico. Cartels are profiting from human trafficking and have likely facilitated more than 2 million illegal immigrants encountered by law enforcement at the U.S. Southwest border in 2024 alone, straining our vital resources and putting the American people at risk. Criminal groups drive much of the unrest and lawlessness in the Western Hemisphere. They also engage in extortion, weapons and human smuggling, and other illicit and dangerous revenue-seeking operations, including kidnapping for ransom, forced labor, and sex trafficking. While some of these key drivers of migrants are expected to persist, heightened U.S. border security enforcement and deportations under the Trump administration are proving to serve as a deterrent for migrants seeking to illegally cross our borders. U.S. Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border in January 2025 dropped 85% from the same period in 2024. Transnational Islamist extremists such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda and affiliated jihadi groups continue to pursue, enable, or inspire attacks against the United States and our citizens abroad and within the homeland to advance their ultimate objective of establishing a global Islamist caliphate. This includes heightened efforts to spread their ideology to recruit and radicalize individuals in the US and the West. While the New Year's Day attacker in New Orleans had no known direct contact with ISIS terrorists, he was influenced and radicalized by ISIS ideological propaganda, as one example. Al-Qaeda and its affiliates continue to call for attacks against the United States as they conduct attacks overseas. These jihadist groups have shown their ability to adapt and evolve, including using new technology and tactics to spread their ideology and recruit new followers. A range of non-state cyber criminals are also targeting our economic interests, our critical infrastructure, and advanced commercial capability for extortion, other coercive pursuits, and financial gain. These actors are using a variety of tactics, including phishing, ransomware, and denial of service attacks to disrupt our systems and steal sensitive and lucrative information, using available technologies and taking advantage of US cyber vulnerabilities. Ransomware actors last year, for example, attacked the largest payment processor for US healthcare institutions, and another set of criminal actors conducted cyber attacks against US water utilities. Some of these non-state cyber actors also operate as proxies for or emulate similar activities being carried out by major state actors. The IC sees China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea engaging in activities that could challenge US capabilities and interests, especially related to our security and economy. They are in some cases working together in different areas to target US interests and to protect themselves from US sanctions. At this point, the IC assesses that China is our most capable strategic competitor. Under the leadership of Xi Jinping, the People's Republic of China seeks to position itself as a leading power in the world stage, economically, technologically, and militarily. Beijing is driven in part by a belief that Washington is pursuing a broad effort to contain China's rise and undermine CCP rule. China's most serious domestic challenge is probably China's slowing economy and the potential instability that could occur if socioeconomic grievances lead to large-scale unrest. Growing economic tensions with the United States and other countries could also weigh on China's plans for economic growth and domestic job creation. China's military is fielding advanced capabilities, including hypersonic weapons, stealth aircraft, advanced submarines, stronger space and cyber warfare assets, and a larger arsenal of nuclear weapons. While it appears they would like to develop and maintain positive ties with the United States and the Trump administration to advance its own interests and avoid conflict, China is building its military capability in part to gain an advantage in the event of a military conflict with the United States around the issue of China's efforts towards unification with the Republic of China or Taiwan. Beijing is advancing its cyber capabilities for sophisticated operations aimed at stealing sensitive US government and private sector information and pre-positioning additional asymmetric attack options that may be deployed in a conflict. China's cyber activities have been linked to multiple high-profile breaches, including last year's massive compromise of US telecom infrastructure, commonly referred to as Salt Typhoon. Beijing currently dominates global markets and strategically important supply chains, for example, with the mining and processing of several critical minerals. In December, China imposed an export ban to the United States on gallium, germanium, and antimony, all of which are important to the production of semiconductors and our defense technologies. This was in direct response to US export controls on chips designed to broadly limit PRC access to advanced chips and chip-making equipment. China also aims to compete in other critical global industries, including AI, legacy semiconductor chip production, biomanufacturing and genetic sequencing, and medical and pharmaceutical supply production. Russia's nuclear and conventional military capabilities, along with its demonstrated economic and military resilience, make it a formidable competitor. Moscow has more nuclear weapons than any other nation that could inflict catastrophic damage on the United States and the world in the event of a major war that Russian leaders feared put them and their regime at serious risk. In late 2024, Russia announced updates to its public nuclear doctrine, expanding the conditions under which Russia would consider using nuclear weapons. Russia is building a more modern and survivable nuclear force designed to circumvent U.S. missile defense through reliable retaliatory strike potential. It intends to deter the U.S. by holding the U.S. homeland at risk and by having the capabilities to threaten nuclear war in a conflict. Russia's developed advanced cyber capabilities and has attempted to pre-position access to U.S. critical infrastructure for asymmetric options and make it a persistent cyber threat. Russia's cyber activities have been linked to multiple high-profile breaches, including the 2023 hack of Microsoft. Russia is also fielding new capabilities in anti-satellite weapons meant to degrade U.S. and allied space infrastructure. Among Russia's most concerning developments is a new satellite intended to carry a nuclear weapon as an anti-satellite weapon, violating long-standing international law against such activity and putting the U.S. and global economy at risk. Iran continues to seek to expand its influence in the Middle East, despite the degradation to its proxies and defenses during the Gaza conflict. Iran has developed and maintains ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs, including systems capable of striking U.S. targets and allies in the region. They've shown a willingness to use these weapons, including during a 2020 attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and in attacks against Israel in April and October 2024. Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. We continue to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons. Iran will likely continue efforts to counter Israel and press for a U.S. military withdrawal from the region by aiding, arming, and helping to reconstitute its loose consortium of like-minded terrorist actors, which it refers to as its axis of resistance. Although weakened, this collection of actors still presents a wide range of threats, including to Israel's population, U.S. forces deployed in Iraq and Syria, as well as U.S. and international military and commercial shipping and transit. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is pursuing stronger strategic and conventional capabilities that can target U.S. forces and allies in the region, as well as the U.S. homeland, to bolster North Korea's leverage and stature, defend its regime, and achieve at least tacit recognition as a nuclear weapons power. Strategic weapons advances, its deepening ties with Russia, and its economic durability as strengthening its negotiating position against Washington's demands for denuclearization and lessening Kim's need for sanctions relief. Since 2022, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have grown closer. Removing the accelerant of the war in Ukraine is unlikely to revert these bilateral relationships to a pre-war 2021 baseline, leaving room for new strategic priorities and world events to create new incentives or challenges to their expanded cooperation. Russia has been a catalyst for much of this expansion, driven heavily by the support it has needed for its war against Ukraine, including protection from U.S. and Western sanctions. In addition to exchange of military and other resource capabilities with North Korea, Russia has relied more heavily on China's financial and defense industry backing, and has increased combined military exercises with China. With Iran, Russia has also expanded financial ties to mitigate sanctions, Iran has become a critical military supplier to Russia, especially of UAVs, in exchange for Russian technical support for Iranian weapons, intelligence, and advanced cyber capabilities. The threats that we see to the U.S. to U.S. national security are both complex and multifaceted. In closing, I want to address briefly the Signal chat issue that I know many of you are concerned about. The President and National Security Advisor Waltz held a press conference yesterday with a clear message. It was a mistake that a reporter was inadvertently added to a Signal chat with high-level national security principals having a policy discussion about imminent strikes against the Houthis and the effects of the strike. National Security Advisor has taken full responsibility for this, and the National Security Council is conducting an in-depth review along with technical experts working to determine how this reporter was inadvertently added to this chat. The conversation was candid and sensitive, but as the President National Security Advisor stated, no classified information was shared. There were no sources, methods, locations, or war plans that were shared. This was a standard update to the National Security Cabinet that was provided alongside updates that were given to foreign partners in the region. The Signal Message app comes pre-installed on government devices. In December of 2024, CISA stated, quote, "We strongly urge highly targeted individuals to immediately review and apply best practices provided in the guidance to protect mobile communications, including consistent use of end-to-end encryption." And they named Signal as an app, as an example of such an end-to-end encrypted messaging app. Ideally, these conversations occur in person. However, at times, fast-moving coordination of an unclassified nature is necessary where in-person conversation is not an option. I'm also aware that a lawsuit was filed yesterday on this issue. As a result of that pending litigation, I'm limited in my ability to comment further on that specific case. My Office of General Counsel will be in close contact with the Department of Justice on this matter. The most important thing to the American people and to all of us is the success of this military operation against terrorists who have been and continue to attack American service members was extremely successful, thanks to the leadership of President Trump and the actions of our brave men and women in uniform. As the heads of the American people's intelligence community, we will continue to provide the President, you in Congress, and our warfighters with timely, unbiased, relevant intelligence to keep our country secure, free, prosperous, and at peace. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Gabbard. We now turn to member questions. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. I want to talk about, before I get into the threats, I want to talk about something we've talked about in this committee and in this setting before. We've had IC agency leaders commit to complying with our document requests but not follow through. And I don't know if this is due to direction from previous administration or middle management obstruction, but I find it completely unacceptable. In fact, I had to subpoena the NSA in order to cooperate with our AHI investigation last year. As you all know, it's the charge of this committee to conduct rigorous oversight, and part of that oversight is occasionally requires us that we request documents from your organizations to enable our investigations. We cannot adequately do our jobs without your partnership and your cooperation. General Hawk and General Cruz, we had this conversation here before last year, and I'm not satisfied with your responsiveness. Therefore, I'm going to ask that question again on the record in this open setting to each of you. Do I have your unequivocal commitment to cooperating with document or other information requests from this committee, General Hawk?
You do, Chairman.
Thank you, General. Director Patel.
You do, Mr. Chairman.
Director Gabbard.
Yes, Chairman.
Director Ratcliffe.
Yes, you do, Chairman and Ranking Member. And I want to start by saying it's good to be back. It's good to see you. And as you all know, I have a special appreciation for the work that this committee does, having previously been a member. I also understand the importance of the oversight role that it has. And so you have my full commitment and my understanding about what your responsibilities are and my obligation to keep you fully and currently informed, and I will do that.
Appreciate that. General Cruz.
Chairman, of course, you have our continuing support on this critically important effort for the nation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to turn now to something that's a topic of conversation and really needs to be, and that's our own neighborhood here in our Western Hemisphere. I mentioned in my opening statement, I'm deeply concerned about encroachment in the Western Hemisphere, not just by China, but other adversaries like Russia and Iran, from Russian military cooperation with and support to Venezuela and Nicaragua, CCP-linked companies, acquisition of critical assets in Central and South America, Iran's defense agreement with Bolivia, the establishment of a technical military cooperation commission, including Venezuela, Cuba, China, Russia, and Iran. And I could list several more alarming examples. I'm afraid we focus so much of our attention across the world that we've lost sight of our own neighborhood, leading to the anti-American regimes gaining permanent footholds within striking distance of the homeland. So, Director Gabbard, to the extent that you can discuss it in this setting, what is the intelligence community's assessment of adversary encroachment in the Western Hemisphere?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll be able to go into greater detail in the closed session, but the intelligence community assessment reflects what you have just detailed and outlined. The continued competition, encroachment, and investments that are occurring in the Western Hemisphere have rapidly increased and continue to pose a threat both to our economic interests and to our security. Every day there are new reports of further attempts. One just recently that came up yesterday with investments that are being made in the southeast part of the United States. Again, I'll go into this further in a closed setting, but the intelligence assessments that we are receiving are being shared with senior cabinet officials, Department of Energy, Commerce, Treasury, those who are working alongside us to not only monitor, but to determine the best policies that will protect our interests.
Thank you. I want to turn to Director Patel real quick in the time that I have left. If you can flesh this out for me just a little bit. You indicated something that caught my attention in the proceeding yesterday, and that was your involvement with the Judicial Drug Task Force that you partner with at the state level, and how that has yielded positive results with regard to cartel activity. Can you put a little finer point on that to describe those partnerships in the 53 seconds we have remaining?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thanks for having us, Ranking Member. My priorities at the FBI have been to partner with state and local law enforcement in ways that we have not done so before, particularly on information sharing, and it's a two-way street. And in order for us to effectuate drug seizures and narcotics interdictions in the 50 states, we treat them as all border states because that's what's happening. We have an American citizen die of a drug overdose every 7 minutes. That is wildly out of control and unacceptable. But the FBI cannot do that mandate and secure the American people from Washington, D.C. So we're putting resources in the field. We're working with our partners at the state and local level. And we are seeing immediate results, as we are seeing in Arkansas, as I outlined yesterday, with hundreds of arrests, thousands of pounds of narcotics seized, dozens of weapons, and multiple indictments.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to yield and recognize Ranking Member Himes for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's something I care as much about as the national security of the United States, it's the powers and prerogatives of this Congress and its oversight duties. So I want to spend a minute or so on yesterday's testimony in front of the Senate and direct these questions in particular to Director Patel and Director Gabbard. Yesterday, Senator Heinrich asked, did this conversation, referring to the signal chat, include information on weapons, packages, targets, or timing? Director Patel, you said not that I'm aware of. Director Gabbard, you said same answer. This morning we learned that the signal chat included the following update, forward-looking update from the Secretary of Defense. Time now, 11:44 Eastern Time. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are go for mission launch. 12:15 Eastern Time. F-18 launch. First strike package. 13:45 trigger-based F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Also, strike drones launch. MQ-9s. 14:10. More F-18s launch. Second strike package. Do either of the directors want to reflect on their testimony yesterday in the context of what I just read?
Sure. One, I was not on that signal chat. Two, I have not reviewed it. And three, as you just indicated, that was made public this morning.
But Director, you didn't prior to yesterday's Senate, you were on the signal chat, correct?
No,
Okay, but did you review the material on the signal chat?
no, I wasn't
Okay.
on it.
Director Gabbard?
Yes, Ranking Member. My answer yesterday was based on my recollection or the lack thereof on the details that were posted there. I was not, and what was shared today reflects the fact that I was not directly involved with that part of the signal chat and replied at the end reflecting the effects, the very brief effects that the National Security Advisor had shared.
So it's your testimony that less than 2 weeks ago, you were on a signal chat that had all of this information about F-18s and MQ-9 Reapers and targets on strike, and you in that 2-week period simply forgot that that was there. That's your testimony?
My testimony is I did not recall the exact details of what was included there.
That was not your testimony. Your testimony was that you were not aware of anything related to weapons packages, targets, and timing.
As the testimony yesterday continued on, there were further questions related to that, where I acknowledged that there was conversation about weapons, and I don't remember the exact wording that I used, but I did not recall the specific details that were included.
Director Gabbard, you've reasserted that there was no classified information. I think we can all agree that that information shouldn't have been out there. But let me ask you this. Are you familiar with the ODNI's classification guidance?
I'm familiar.
I've actually got a copy right here. If I read you a part of that guidance, I wonder if you could tell me what the level of classification indicated is. I'm reading from your classification guidance. And the criteria is information providing indication or advance warning that the U.S. or its allies are preparing an attack. Do you recall what your own guidance would suggest that be classified?
I don't have the specifics in front of me, but it would point to what was shared would fall under the DoD's classification system and the Secretary of Defense's authority.
So let me help you because there's a very clear answer.
And what is not.
I guess you don't have it, but information providing, this is the ODNI guidance, information providing indication or advance warning that the U.S. or its allies are preparing an attack should be classified as top secret. Do you disagree with that?
I don't disagree with that. I just point out that the DoD classification guidance is separate from the ODNI's classification guidance.
Do you think it would be materially different?
Ultimately, the Secretary of Defense holds the authority to classify or declassify.
Do you think it's likely that DoD guidance is materially different from what I just read?
I haven't reviewed the DoD guidance, so I can't comment.
Director Gabbard, a lot of this suggests sort of a lack of sobriety. When there's punch emojis and fire emojis, it's a lack of sobriety. I don't mean that literally. But I have one last question for you because I think people really listen to what you have to say. You, on March 15th, as DNI, retweeted a post from Ian Miles Chong, who is listed on RT, that's Russia Today's website, as, quote, a political and cultural commentator who has contributed content to RT since at least 2022. Director Gabbard, do you think that it's responsible for you as head of the intelligence community and the principal presidential intelligence advisor to retweet posts from individuals affiliated with Russian state media?
That retweet came from my personal account, and I would have to go back to look at the substance of the tweet.
Can I, just so that we don't have a lack of confusion amongst our allies and enemies and us, can I act perhaps that you not think that you should be saying one thing on your personal account than you say officially?
I maintain my First Amendment rights to be able to express my own personal views on different issues.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields, now recognize the distinguished Vice Chairman, General Kelly.
Yeah, I now, for the first 30 seconds, Mr. Ratcliffe or Director Ratcliffe, formerly known as Texas, from this Mississippi guy, I'd like to give you 30 seconds if you have anything to respond to what Ms. Gabbard just, Director Gabbard, I'm sorry, just said.
Well, Mississippi, it's good to see you again. And I appreciate the opportunity. You know, there's so much talk about this Atlantic article and about things that were said and that could have happened instead of a focus on what did happen. So my responsibility as CIA director, one of its responsibilities is to kill terrorists. And that's exactly what I did along with President Trump's excellent national security team. That's what we should be focused on. With regard to that article, I also would appreciate the opportunity to relay the fact that yesterday I spent 4 hours answering questions from senators as a result of that article that were intimating that I transmitted classified information because there were hidden messages. Those messages were revealed today and revealed that I did not transmit classified information, and that the reporter, who I don't know, I think intentionally intended it to indicate that. That reporter also indicated that I had released the name of an undercover CIA operative in that signal chain. In fact, I had released the name of my chief of staff, who is not operating undercover. That was deliberately false and misleading. And I appreciate the opportunity to reflect that my answers haven't changed. I used an appropriate channel to communicate sensitive information. It was permissible to do so. I didn't transfer any classified information. And at the end of the day, what is most important is that the mission was a remarkable success, is what everyone should be focused on here, because that's what did happen, not what possibly could have happened.
Thank you, Director Ratcliffe. Director Patel, thank you for the great job that you've done. So first of all, your coordination and trying to comply with the letter that was sent last year and the year before asking for the baseball shooting, of which what I got was basically what happened on the field, and I was there, so I don't need to know that, although no one from the FBI ever talked to me about what happened. They talked to people who were not there. But I appreciate your commitment to getting us the full unredacted report, or the redactions are to protect innocent people who are not part of the process, not the people who made decisions to classify that as suicide by a cop, as opposed to an assassination attempt of many members of Congress, of which I was one. Thank you for your commitment, Director Patel, because I know that you will give us what we have asked for so that we can put this to rest, Mr. Winstrup, myself, and several others. Can I get your commitment to do that, Director Patel?